and welcome back to Learning with Lulu. In this video, we are going to quickly review and do a summary of chapter 23 in Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. Before we get started, please make sure to show your support of the channel, especially if you are a returning viewer, by subscribing to the channel, sharing with others that you know may benefit from this type of content, and by the end of the video, commenting your thoughts, your interpretations, and analysis of events that transpire in chapter 23 of the Scarlet Letter. So, chapter 23 is the revelation of the Scarlet Letter. It is finally election day, and Dimmesdale, who has prepared an entirely new sermon for it, is going to deliver his sermon. He does so in such a incredible manner that the audience are just as in love with him as ever. Some parts of the text talk about how they even are like feeling like they see a halo around his head, and they just feel like he is so angelic, essentially. Dimmesdale's sermon specifically focuses on God and God's connection with the various communities of mankind, and he especially, I feel like, focuses on praise and hope and uplifting the community here in New England. Now, as soon as he is done with his sermon, the churchgoers, or the people who are listening to the sermon, they notice that while that was probably his best sermon ever, the most inspired by God, the most truthful, they notice that physically his demeanor seems to be tanking. And at one point it even says that some of them wouldn't be surprised if, he was about to die, but instead of dying, he was like essentially transfigured and taken into heaven. As some people are observing this, the crowd is making their way towards where a feast for election day is going to be held, and Dimmesdale sees Hester, and she is once again by the scaffold where he should have been 7 years ago with her. He's inspired. He's like, this is my moment. This is my moment to come clean before all of the community. God has always known. But he pauses from going to the feast, and he starts calling out to Hester and Pearl. And I believe he even calls her my Pearl. And Roger Chillingworth, of course, he doesn't want this to happen because it's been he's had control of the situation up until only very recently. And so he's trying to call out and be like, don't do this, stop. But Arthur Dimmesdale is not paying attention. Dimmesdale gets on the scaffold with Hester and Pearl. He declares that God has led him to this point, and as he is speaking, you can tell he's starting to get weaker and weaker, like he genuinely physically is not well, and he starts to lean on Hester. Of course, she is this embodiment of strength in this story and resilience, and he begins to lean on her, and she's supporting him as he is confessing to the entire crowd, who is, I would say, essentially dumbstruck and just staring, listening. And he confesses that he is Pearl's father. When he concludes this, he suddenly doesn't need Hester's support anymore, and he stands upright. It's probably the adrenaline going through him. And he stands upright and he says, see, essentially I have a scarlet letter too. And he tears away the piece of cloth, I believe that indicates him as a minister, and reveals his own scarlet letter to the onlooking crowd. After doing this, the crowd is shocked. Dimmesdale kind of collapses, and Chillingworth, he yells out like, oh, you've escaped me, or something like that, because truly Chillingworth now has no upper hand over Hester, Dimmesdale, and Pearl. And in his twisted anger, he recognizes that. He says, "Oh, you've escaped me." It's at this point that Dimmesdale looks at his daughter, little Pearl. It's kind of a moment where he's like, "Can you accept me now as your father?" And she does. She gives him a kiss. Remember, she won't give him a kiss in the forest earlier, but she gives him a kiss, and he's essentially earned her affection based on her parameters. She was the one saying, if you want me to treat you like my father, I need you to act like it. I need you to acknowledge that I am in fact your daughter. And so she does embrace him and give him a kiss. Then Hester, she realizes that Arthur Dimmesdale is dying, probably the only man that she's ever truly loved. She asks him, are we going to be able to be together in heaven? I think for me, there is a little bit of irony at this point, because obviously we are seeing that he has no spiritual superiority over her. She, in my understanding and reading of the text, she is equally as holy as this man who happens to be revered in a community as a spiritual leader. But she asks him, are we going to be together in heaven? Are we going to have that chance? And Dimmesdale doesn't really give a hopeful answer. And he essentially just says, that's going to be up to God on whether he is going to require us to be punished anymore for violating such a sacred law. And then he says goodbye to her, and he passes away. He dies. And that's the end of the chapter. So that is chapter 23. It's a somewhat vindicating chapter for Hester's place in the community, the way she is going to be received and perceived. However, there is this element of sadness to it, because she's still not getting the life that she was dreaming of, running away and being with the father of her child and getting this chance to be a sweet little family. And even in his dying words, he can't say, what, I think God is a God of love and a merciful God, and I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be able to be together in heaven. Instead, he's like, I don't know, we might need to be punished more. And then he dies. And so there is this touch of sadness for me for Hester and Pearl, but especially Hester. So let me know what you think. If you find the ending satisfying or not satisfying, what do you think of Chillingworth's reaction, the way Dimmesdale handled it? Yeah, just any other thoughts you might have on this chapter 23 of the Scarlet Letter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you back around on this channel. Again, make sure to show your support in all the various ways, and with that being said, thanks for watching.